Alrighty, you guys, Sales Bro Pod. This one is episode 23, and we've got Dan with us. Dan, thank you for coming on, man.
What's going on, guys? Pleasure to be on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so guys, this is our first time meeting. I feel like I know a lot of people that he knows that, and I've watched, Dan has a podcast, TikTok. If you're listening to this, you probably know their podcast. But Dan, for the people who don't know who you are, what you're up to, like, who are you?
Yeah, so I'm a sales guy at heart. I would say that's mainly how I identify. More importantly, right now, working on building two great companies, Ascension and ListKit. So I'm a co-founder at both, director of sales at both. And really my day-to-day is just either managing the sales team, doing a little bit of sales myself, and just making sure that money's coming through.
Sweet. There's a lot more layers to that. You make it sound very, very simple, but we'll dive into it. I like to start by taking it back, man, taking it way back. I think, how old are you, by the way?
I'm 24.
Okay, cool. So about the same age, 24. When did you kind of get into like sales, entrepreneurship, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I got into sales before I got into entrepreneurship, and it was right after high school. I had been doing masonry and just physical labor throughout high school for money during the summer, just to, have money to go get Chipotle, go put gas in the car, things along those lines. And then after high school, I started kind of looking into like, hey, I want to do something in business, want to get some relevant experience, because I had always known that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And the first opportunity to actually get into like a business related role just happened to be sales. Like it could have been marketing, could have been accounting, could have really been anything. But my cousin, Andre Hakel Jr., who I run a couple businesses with, and you guys may know, was working at this company called Bandolier, which was a lead generation agency, funny enough. And it was essentially like outsourced SDRs. That was basically it. And the reason why I wanted to start there was just to, one, get some relevant business experience, but number two, it was the summer, it's hot outside. I didn't want to do any more manual labor. Yeah. They had a cool building, which in my little hometown in Binghamton, New York, is pretty rare. They had air conditioning, they had free coffee that you could grab whenever. So figured I would interview, just do the same thing as Andre, just because I liked hanging out with him and thought it'd be pretty cool to work at a startup. Because like startups are new and exciting, and I've been thinking of business plans that I never really had acted on before then. Interviewed, got the job, and from there was pretty, I would say, boring experience, but super relevant to what I was going to do in a couple of years. So it was like finding qualified leads, writing personalized first lines for email outreach. And then after about 2 months, they put me on the phones, making a couple hundred dials a day, trying to book in as many demos as possible. I'd get another like small commission bonus if the closer closed the demo. But right off the bat, that was super helpful, just because I feel like cold calling, next to probably door knocking, is the second hardest way to actually make a sale. So it was good. I felt like it threw me into the fire, got me comfortable with people saying, fuck off, stop calling me. Just, I don't want to talk to you, but you just having to persevere and starting to realize like, okay, it's not the end of the world if somebody rejects you, which I think is helpful for not only sales, but helpful in life. And then beyond that, just kind of realizing, hey, it is a numbers game to a certain extent, which is wrong true, whether that's, reaching out to people through cold email, making cold calls. You really just need to put in the reps, and things will start to happen for you.
Yeah. Did you said, you were working a manual labor job, and then Andre was like with this cool new startup, and you're like, hey, that looks pretty cool, and it's inside. What was your take on sales prior to that? Like, were you like, oh, like I actually low key wanted to try sales, like I thought I might be good at it, or were you kind of feeling like indifferent about it? Like how did that play out?
I don't think anybody really feels that way. I think it was Cole Gordon, who I may mention another time in this podcast, just because he's somebody I definitely look up to. But he said sales is kind of like the military of business. Not in the cool way, like the military protects the country. It's more so like the military, like, I don't know what I want to do necessarily. I'm gonna join the military. It's like, I want to get in the business. I don't have like a Series 7 to get into finance. I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to accounting. Let's just get into sales to get our foot in the door. So no, it wasn't something where I was like, hey, I definitely want to do sales. That said, I always was a kid who was interested in entrepreneurship. So I had, watched all these movies on entrepreneurship whenever they had come out. I had listened to all these podcasts about entrepreneurship. And a common trend, if you listen to enough of those success stories, is that the person has some background in sales. So it
Mhm.
wasn't like something sexy that I definitely wanted to do. But I did already know going into it that it was super important just because these entrepreneurs that I had looked up to always just happened to have some sort of sales background. So I was like, okay, I'm not necessarily over the moon about this, but
Yeah.
I definitely see the value in learning that skill.
Yeah. So were you like from an early age, did you kind of know that like you wanted to run your own business, or was sales you were just like, oh, I think it's a step in the right direction?
I always knew that I wanted to run my own business from
Okay.
probably, I don't know, as soon as I was thinking about a career. Like when I was young enough, I was like, okay, first I'm going to go to the NFL. I'll retire with a couple Super Bowls, and then I'll start running a business. And then when I was a little bit more realistic in high school, I was like, okay, I'll go to college, I'll get a degree, and then I'll start running a business. By the time I was in college, I was like, okay, I kind of want to get out and start running a
Yeah.
business. But no, it always been in the cards for me, just because my grandfather had started a coupon book company when he was in his late 50s. So he didn't really see real wealth until that point. Up until that point, he was a math teacher. He had worked his way up the school district and became a principal. So not a bad career. Like he still had success in his own field, but obviously he was able to kind of, I guess, take his life and like his family's quality of life to the next level once he got into
Mhm.
entrepreneurship. So I always looked into that. And also it just seemed fun in general. Like, when you're around people like that who are meeting with their business partners and they're talking about all these deals, as you probably know, there's going to be, $50 million ideas and $1 million deals that you can talk about throughout your lifetime.
Yep.
And yeah, only one or two may actually materialize in your lifetime, but that's really all you need. So I was exposed to that at an early age and just had the, kind of the benefits of talking to him about the battles that he went through and the cool deals that they made happen. So yeah,
Yeah.
something that, it wasn't something I really fell into, I would say. It was something I always kind of had my mind on from an early age.
Cool. What did you when you went to school, like college, did you study like business or like something in that general field, or was it like engineering or something?
No, it was business. It was I went to the University of Miami for a year and a half, and I was studying like international business and finance. And then I transferred back home. That was like right before COVID, just due to some financial aid issues. And I kind of was on like the path of, hey, I want to start a business anyways. So just
Yeah.
wanted to go with the cheaper option. I didn't want to rack up a bunch of debt. And I had stuck with finance. And then about 2 months in, after actually enrolling into finance at the new school, Binghamton University, I was like, this is not fun at all. Super difficult. The teacher was rough, and I was like, okay, I want to start my own business anyways. I'm just gonna kind of keep switching majors until I found the easiest one to graduate with, and that happened
Mhm.
to be marketing. So it was always in business, but the degree wasn't super important. I kind of started with a tough degree and just started sliding
Yeah.
down until I found something that didn't take up as much of my time, so I could think more and act on the business ideas that we had, since we had started an agency when we were in college.
Mm. In hindsight, dude, I wish I would have done some business or marketing. Like I started in architecture, bro. The like complete opposite,
Architecture,
like
okay.
kind of low key, like artsy, like not very business oriented. And then I went to construction science, and then I went to project management, went to estimating, which was sales, and that was kind of my pipeline. I personally didn't really realize that entrepreneurship was a thing for me, but I hated being told what to do. Like I
Mhm.
had like authority problems. Did you not like hate's a strong word. I didn't like having bosses. Like I didn't like people telling me what to do. Did you have any of that or
Yeah, definitely. I like to be the ones making the decision. That's for sure. Like I don't have the authority issues in the way that like Bart Simpson has authority issues,
yeah.
where like he just quite literally can't listen to any authority figures. But especially when it comes to just like my life and kind of like the career path, I never wanted to feel capped. And
Mhm.
I never just wanted to feel like there was like some sort of ceiling there because I'm underneath somebody else. So I think
Yeah.
authority issues in that sense, yeah, definitely.
Cool. So when you said you started your first agency while you were still in school, right?
Yeah, yeah, we were. This was like right. when COVID-19 started. It was like March 2020. So me, Andre, Christian had started an agency with another partner where we ended up splitting because of the partnership. It just wasn't something that we wanted to be in long term. But that was like the first
Yeah.
exposure into the agency game. And we weren't specialized in anything. It was more so like full service. We were working with like a lot of local companies. Like, hey, we do the restaurant down the street's website. We would meet this guy through LinkedIn. We'd build out a coaching program. But that was like the first exposure into entrepreneurship in general. And we were a little
Yeah.
bit familiar with like the agency model and just being a service provider and scaling that up because we had worked at the lead generation agency right at the end of high school doing the cold calling gig.
Yeah. Did you guys from the beginning, did you kind of assign like, oh, I'm doing sales, I'm doing operations, or was it disorganized?
No, it was pretty I guess the division of labor was pretty good early on, just because Andre was the operator. So he's the one building everything out. And it's just I feel like it's very evident to see who the good operator is in the group because naturally you're going to be like, okay, let's start a business. And Andre will be like, okay, the website's done. The LLC is filed. Everything's good to go. I just reached out to a lawyer. We'll have like the agreements drawn up. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't even think about all the steps involved there. So like, yeah, de facto, you're,
Yeah.
you're kind of the guy leading the charge here.
Yeah.
Christian, more so the creative, like he had done some freelance blog posting, I believe. So it makes sense that he settled in copy just because he had been writing beforehand and enjoyed that process. And they had known each other a little bit. I didn't really know Christian when we had started the business, but he had a podcast with Andre that they'd been running for a couple years beforehand. And then with me, sales wise, I feel like I excelled in the role that I was at when I was working at the lead generation agency, and I was comfortable with it. A lot of people don't like sales. They have some sort of apprehension about getting on the phone and the pressure can get to them and they can burn out. I felt like it was pretty fun. And
Yeah.
when we were starting our own company, the thing I was most excited about was being the closer. And instead of setting up the appointments, being the one who would actually be able to collect payment. So the first thing I did was just watch all of this Russell Brunson content. And I could get to the point where it was super cheesy in the beginning, especially when you're just getting people to give you credit cards over the phone. Like we did that before we were on Zoom. I'd have people read it off to me, but like I could remember the first four numbers of a MasterCard, of a Visa, just that type of shit. But that's what I was super excited about in the beginning. And then also I've always been somebody who's I'd say decently social, a pretty good talker, pretty smart, and also just like the tall sales guy. So like of the group, they're also like, yeah, Dan, you should do sales, and I was more than happy to take over that role.
That was my next question. Like, if somebody looked at the three of you guys and they were like, oh, Dan just kind of seems like the sales guy. Like I was going to ask, like, were you just naturally kind of that guy? And you just answered it like, yeah, you kind of were. And it's funny. And I'm sure you've dealt with, many sales reps outside of the ones that you are just working with right now today. But like, dude, I'm the opposite. Like I was more of that like engineer, like introverted quotes type. And I had to like step out of it. Once I realized like, oh dude, these guys are making money. Like I stepped out of it real quick because I wanted to make money and that was the vehicle to do what I wanted to do, which it was kind of blurry at that time, but I just knew I needed to head in that direction. So
that's interesting. So because I always tell people, I think the whole like born salesman is just a facade, really. Because like working at the agency, seeing people cold calling, you couldn't really guess who would be the highest performer. It could be the guy who's more similar to me, who's a bit more outgoing, doesn't have a problem talking to people. It could be the guy who's more introverted, and like sometimes the introverted guy who just absolutely crushes it and just always focused on exactly what he's doing, and he's the most process oriented, so he wins out. But I guess why did you settle on sales then? Not to take over the interview here, but there's definitely multiple ways to get involved in business. Was that just like by happenstance?
It's just like the way the cards were dealt. Like I just saw, because I knew I went into construction because I figured like it's a good safety net. I could always get a job. I could always make 60, 80 grand a year, something like that. And I'm in Texas, so like stuff is being built every day. But once I went into construction, I got into project management, went into estimating, and then I realized like they were very close, and I was like, let me just take one more step in this direction and just start doing like, because I learned estimating in school, I didn't learn sales, and I very quickly found out that the job was actually sales, not estimating. And so I could be the best estimator, but like if I couldn't sell it, then I wasn't making the money. So I just felt like long term, I like low key for a while. I knew I wanted to get into real estate, and I knew real estate was sales and that kind of stuff. So I was like, this is probably a step in the right direction. Similar to you, like well, you graduated, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So I graduated and I was like, yeah, this, it's a good fallback, but I really want to do more. And I think sales is the step in that direction. But I've never heard the military, or sales is the military of entrepreneurship. Like I never heard that, but it's so true. Which is funny looking back at it.
No, it's funny that you mentioned being an estimator, because I'm assuming that's like you go to the job, you kind of like write out all the line items, what it's going to cost. And the reason it's
Yeah.
sales is just because usually they'll be looking at 3-4 different people to actually
Ex-
fulfill on the job, and the one who's better at sales wins out, right?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a game of like, it's a very technical sale. It's not like a coaching program where it's like, oh yeah, you get these three things and a guarantee or whatever.
Yeah. Or like,
But
what's that going to do for your life if you
yeah,
if you
yeah.
get
So
these
it's like,
4x4s at
yeah,
this price?
yeah. So I don't know. It was a big, and I mean, this is kind of off topic, but like transitioning more into like what you do now and kind of what I do now, more of like the online business space. It was like way different. It was like a culture shock type thing, because I was managing like a 3 month sales cycle and then going down to like a 1 hour sales cycle.
Mhm.
It's like I have to collect cash on the call. So you started cold calling, I guess an SDR for this agency. Um, how easy or easily did that transition into closing the deals for the first agency that you guys created? Like you said, you were collecting numbers on the phone, and you just like that was what you wanted to do. But did it translate like you thought it would?
Not necessarily. It was definitely difficult at first, but I think once I got over the hump of like, okay, I can do this, it became easier
Yeah.
for me. And I definitely enjoyed closing more than I enjoyed setting. Um, then I also started to realize like, okay, the other pieces like sales assets that you have that you can get in front of people before the call, the offer that you're working with, how warm the audience is, where that traffic is coming from, plays such an important role in the sales process.
Yeah.
Just because right off the bat, we were dealing with like new offers that had like for the coaching programs that we'd help build out, new offers,
Mm-hmm.
no product market fit, no warm audience to validate it to. Just spin this thing up, no guarantee. Let's sell for $5,000 and let's get completely cold traffic right off the rip. So like my first experience like in closing, I was super nervous because after like 4 or 5 deals or 4 or 5 calls, I just hadn't closed anybody. But
Yeah.
I was like, okay, what can I do? This lady doesn't even know why she's on the phone. This person's asking me if they should, sell their fucking clothes in order to have enough money for one down payment, when it's like, okay, there's almost zero chance that they're going to see
Yeah.
results quick enough to make the second installment. But after I like took another 10, 15 calls and like saw, okay, now I can level out and it's about a 20% close rate. I just need enough volume and there's going to be prospects that
Mm-hmm.
genuinely aren't a fit. I was able to calm down a little bit more and say like,
Yeah.
okay, the experience from my cold calling was definitely helpful just to be more comfortable speaking to people on the phone. But those first like 15, 20 calls were definitely another huge learning curve, just because like now you're not stressed for time, so it's not like you're worried that the person's going to hang up for you. But the set of challenges and like really creating enough urgency in this person's life to try to get them to give you $3, $4, $5, $6,000 on the call presents a whole nother bunch of hurdles, and also is just more high pressure in general.
Yeah.
So just like dealing with that pressure, understanding like the way that sales call should work in comparison to a cold call should work, was definitely another learning thing. But I feel like I picked it up pretty quickly in 15, 20 calls.
Yeah, dude, I could imagine that would be difficult because your first closing role, like you're also working with guys who they're new to it as well. It's not like you have other salespeople on your team who are already making money, who are already like doing numbers that you can go and say, hey, like, what did I do right or wrong here? It's like you guys were all figuring it out together. And I'm sure like all the other co-founders had similar issues where it's like, like they're trying to figure it out. And it's like, we'll just keep going and eventually we will figure it out. And it seems like you guys did,
Yeah, no, I
which
actually
is
never
super.
connected connected the dots till you just said it there, but I've actually never closed on an offer that had a proven sales cycle beforehand. Like anytime
Yeah.
I've ever closed on an offer, it's all been me kind of like taking a call, writing out the full script myself, and then relaying to the team like what tweaks may need to be made, gathering sales assets, like formulating the templates for the follow-ups and just all of that stuff from scratch. So yeah, no, definitely pretty cool looking back on it that we were able to make it
Yeah.
work at least to some extent.
Yeah. And I would say, dude, like that's experience that a lot of people in this space, like a lot of people listening to this, they don't have that. Like a lot of the people that I'm working with, like they are coming in looking to hop on with existing offers and like just make cash, right? But you like what are some of the things that you found with the first agency and maybe now like with all the other projects that you've worked on, like some of the things that help make that sales call more efficient, more effective, either before the call or after the call?
Yeah, I would say before the call, we'll just go before, during, and after. Before the call,
Yeah.
getting them as much information as possible and not trying to just load them up with marketing language that's just going to get them on the call is going to be
Yeah.
helpful. You want there to be a base level understanding. For example, if you were selling influencer marketing on TikTok, right? You want these guys to come to the call pretty much sold on the idea that they need influencer marketing for TikTok. So you just have to
Right.
sell them on the mechanism that you guys are using to actually fulfill that, right? If
Right.
that makes sense. So you don't want to just
Yeah.
focus on like marketing fluff that sets super unrealistic expectations. You want them to understand why they need your service, right? You want to get that in front of them, so much so to the point where if they don't need that, they're just going to cancel the call beforehand. During
Yeah.
the call,
Exactly.
I feel like once you're formulating a new sales process, you start to understand some fundamental truths once you do it a couple times. And you just start to break up the call into, okay, like, hey, here's going to be like the intro. Here's the discovery process. Here's the pitch. Here's where, I handle objections if need be. And here's where I close. And if you do it enough times, you start to realize, okay, what pace I should be moving at in the call, how long each section of the call should be, considering we have 30 minutes here on the phone, and also what should be accomplished at like each benchmark. And that's why, like, even though I don't need a script for really any of our offers, I always start off by writing out the script because it's a helpful thought exercise just to understand the structure. So I don't look at a
Mm.
script in terms of like a formulaic thing of, hey, say this, say this, say this, say this. Because if you look at it that way, like you literally will become a robot that's not able to think critically and your numbers are going to suck. I use it more so for the structure of like, hey, here's roughly, not necessarily like the length is semi important, but here's how long it should take. But more importantly, here's what should be accomplished in that section. And you don't move to the next section until that is accomplished. Right. So like
Yeah.
once you kind of have the anatomy drawn out, it becomes a lot easier to kind of figure out like, okay, what am I supposed to accomplish at each thing? And then you just got to watch your calls back, watch the game tape and be transparent with yourself. Like, are you actually understanding like exactly if they need the service and, letting them know that they need the service before you start pitching, before you move on the pricing? Are they 100% clear on the process? Have you done temp checks? Have you done tie downs? Have you actually got them to a point where they should be sold or where that perceived value is high enough to the point where they're not going to flinch at a $10,000 price point? So
Yeah.
that'd be during the call. Then after the call, really just all about having absolute clarity on what happens next has been the biggest thing for me, because I think that when everybody, starts out, you're like, oh, I fucking crushed that call. This guy said he's going to think about it. He's excited. He seems pretty interested, or he told me he's interested at least. And then you're like, what's going on? Like all of these guys who gave me verbal commitments, none of them have closed in the past 2 weeks. And you
Yeah.
start to freak out. You're like, is this for me? Is this offer even good? You start doubting yourself and you realize it's mainly all on you. And if you take that like responsibility of like saying, hey, if I don't know exactly what happens, like not, hey, I'll follow up with you next week, but we have a call next Tuesday, and not like, hey, I'll sign the contract later today, but hey, he said he'll sign the contract by 5 p.m. And if he hasn't, I'm going to reach out to him because he's already set that
Yeah.
expectation with me. That's been the biggest thing post call, just to make sure that you're not wasting like, the 30 minutes to an hour of hard work that you spent actually selling the person beforehand.
Yeah. Yeah. So That's really good because I mean you're selling a few different things, and I think a lot of people get really bogged down because they're like, dude, I took this sales training, I watched these videos, I've read these books, and it's like they get into something, or maybe they have like results somewhere else, and then they get into a new program, opportunity, whatever, and it's like, dude, I'm blowing it right now. And if you could like continuously go back to those fundamentals, assuming the business that they're working within operates similarly, it would just kind of help you get ramped up faster, help you make sure that things are going as they should be, versus you just becoming like a lot of guys I see they plug into these sales teams that aren't really established, and they just owners just expect them, oh, you're the sales guy, like just make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they're like, dude, I haven't closed anything for like 2 weeks and I'm not getting paid and it's just rough. So that is like really, really beneficial to a lot of the sales reps listening.
Oh, dude, for
Like,
sure. And I would never expect a sales rep to kickstart a new offer for me ever. And
yeah.
me and David, Jacob, who's one of the sales coaches at Ascension, also one of our closers, we're talking about this because he has his thoughts on sales psychology. I've consumed content from a bunch of different people, but we're talking about like what my sales methodology is and like what I adhere to mostly. And I guess it's maybe like Cole Gordon stuff, but in reality, it's not really like any one person that I follow. I just make sure that every time I launch a new offer, I get to a point where I have a sustainable, like good, healthy close rate where I want the closers to see probably like 5 to 10% less than I'm seeing. Then I start to delegate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's really it. So like the sales process, or like my methodology behind that is, hey, never hire a salesperson, never outsource that until you're able to close at a certain level yourself, because there are inherent benefits to founder-led sales. And if I was
Mm-hmm.
if I was like on the market right now looking for a new sales job myself, I would never even entertain like a job offer from somebody who doesn't have like historical data of, hey, like I've been able to do this, or like one of my reps has
Yeah.
been able to hit these numbers.
I'm gonna have to clip that, man. I'm gonna have to clip it because, dude, I also help businesses like get connected with sales reps and help them with systems and stuff. And it's like the same thing. It's they think that, brand new agency, they don't have any clients. But it's like, yeah, we need a sales guy. It's like, no, you don't, dude. Like you need to figure out your offer and your product market fit and all that before. Like you need to close these so that when that sales rep comes in, if they're doing a good job, if they're not, if what needs to be changed, all that stuff. Which leads to a good point, man. How important is the actual offer versus just general sales ability?
Man, that's tough to say. I would say I'm going to give you a more complex answer, because like a simple, like this is more important or that is more important
Yeah,
would
yeah,
do this a disservice. I'd say it's about like 33% offer, 33% the team fulfilling on it, and then 33% the salesperson.
mm,
Right. And if you have like a crazy good offer, and let's say you ramp that up to like it's so good, this is basically selling it itself, I'd probably push that up to like 50% and the other two down to like 25%.
yeah,
It's kind of like a sliding scale. Like the better the offer is, the less you need a crazy good team fulfilling on it and a crazy good salesperson. The better the team fulfilling on it, the less you need like a crazy offer where you're
yeah.
having some sort of like absurd risk reversal that you can barely hit. And the better the salesperson, even like a great salesperson could sell a shitty offer and a team that's
Mm-hmm.
not exactly the best. So it's like those are the three components that I look at. And it's very tough to say because I feel like it's kind of like it's like one will tip the scale the other way. So
Yeah.
like the better the offer, the less you need to be good at like fulfilling and sales, and it kind of all plays a part. But it's not like a clean like, hey, this is more important than that. It's like a combination of things. I feel like with every organization.
Yeah, dude, that's like actually really, really telling of kind of how you guys operate because I've asked so many people, I've had that conversation with so many people, a lot of them being just sales guys, some of them managers, some owners, and none of them ever mentioned the fulfillment part. Like I'm always like
So
the
important.
conversation, yeah, the conversation comes up. It's like, well, offer is super important, like good offer sells itself. But that just speaks, you know, speaks on the behalf of how you guys operate. I mean, I've seen the results of what you guys are able to do for people, which is, it creates that flywheel of like, good results, people coming in who are interested. You don't have to sell them as hard. They're more committed. They get better results. Like, it's just, I mean, it's just how things go, right? Like, you get good
Yeah,
results.
like
You don't have to sell them as hard.
yeah, because if you don't have the results, or if you're trying to fabricate results, like you're playing a very dangerous game where even if you can run up the numbers as quickly as you accumulate that $100,000 a month, like you're going to go straight back down to zero just as quickly.
Yeah.
And you're going to end up on CoffeeZilla. Like, it's going to be ugly. Like, you don't want that future. It's, it's not a good road to go down. So yeah, anybody who pretends that the team fulfilling it and the results aren't important is just, they're probably delusional and also insecure about their ability to get their clients results. Like, there's a reason why there's SEO agencies that can lock in people for a year and charge them $10,000 per month. It doesn't have anything to do with the offer. It probably doesn't have as much as you think to do with the salesperson. It's probably just because they get really good fucking results for their clients. Right. So it definitely is like a key component when you're talking about that equation of like, hey, what's more important here, the offer or sales?
Yeah. Interesting, dude. That's really good insight. And I'm really excited for everyone to hear this, because I've had a lot of different people on, but like, I think you have a very unique perspective as like sales guy, sales manager, offer owner. Like, you've kind of seen it all, and you can kind of see the balance between all the different parts of that business, which is super cool. But you were in college, you eventually graduated, you had this agency up. And I mean, I think I've heard you guys talk about it on your podcast. What's it like, the first agency? Did you guys end up scrapping it, or did you end up pivoting? Like, how did you guys get to, I think, KnowledgeX, which is the lead gen agency? How did you guys eventually get there?
Yeah. So we had essentially scrapped the first agency, or like turned it over to our other partner in the summer of 2020. Then we had started KnowledgeX that summer. So we were all still in school at this point. We all ended up graduating like spring or fall of 2021. I don't know, dude. That was a weird time. It was COVID. I can't even remember the semesters. It's all a blur. Also just fucking nuts. Like, we were all locked in the house up in New York for 2 straight years. But aside the point, we had started KnowledgeX like summer, fall of 2020. And we had originally had like some, good results and good experience building out coaching programs for other people who weren't even coaches beforehand. It was like a knowledge expert who we'd help them digitize their knowledge online by launching a coaching program or a course, which is where the name KnowledgeX came from. So it really had nothing to do with what we ended up making our money in. But we just kept the name. We're like, okay, KnowledgeX is cool. So we had done that, broke even, signed a couple clients, built out their courses, did all right there. Nobody really had a warm audience. So like, people made money, but nobody was like a crazy case study or anything like that. And then we had thought, okay, why don't we, instead of teaching people how to build out their own course, why don't we teach people how to get leads? Because we're pretty good at getting calls on calendar, at least. So we're like, okay, we'll teach them how to do LinkedIn. We had very, very limited knowledge with email, but that still wasn't working well, because the people who needed stuff right now, and we're willing to work with somebody that had no case studies, because we didn't feel like we wanted to use any case studies or testimonials from the old agency. They really just wanted done for you. And they wanted it in a way that heavily tilted the scales in their favor, meaning just like basically performance-based. So a $5,000 group coaching program to learn about lead generation from people that don't have a crazy track record wasn't going to cut it. So we said, okay, let's just get really, really good at cold email, even better than we are right now. And let's just offer this as a done for you service. And we did that in LinkedIn to start. And that was when things started to really click and make sense and say like, okay, we're back on the right path here. And we started signing clients, just doing this pay per call model. Andre got on Twitter, which Christian was ghostwriting for him in the beginning. He started growing his audience. So we had a good thing going, where in a couple months, we had finally like settled on like the pay per call model, probably in like February. And by that summer, we were doing pretty decent numbers. We had a ton of clients, and we're seeing, those fun days where like we've got like these Zapier channels with, how many calls booked. And we knew we were getting like $300 a call, and we'd see like 15, 20 calls booked in a day. And we're like, okay, this is sick. This is a lot of fun. But yeah, that was kind of like where things started to really take off. And then from there, one of the guys that we had got connected with was Daniel Fazio, who a lot of people on Twitter know as Cold Email Wizard, because Andre was actually in his like paid group at the time. I think it was called All
Mhm.
Access Pass. It was something to do with cold email mastery, kind of like an older version of what he does with internet money, as I understand it. But Andre was always just active in the community. He was always providing value. So Daniel's like, okay, I've got this course. There's a ton of people have launched cold email agencies off of it. Out of all those guys, these guys seem to be doing it the best way and building a legitimate business. So we had gotten connected with Daniel just that way. And I think Daniel used to do this a lot where he would just like offer free consulting calls to people in his community. Andre and him connected, hit it off really well. And I think Daniel was just inquiring about what exactly we were doing, what was next for us, all this cool stuff, like how we're scaling, how we're able to hold this many clients while also taking care of all the inbox management for them. And Andre showed him the inbox management training, which was like a ton of calls booked that we had from our agency with like
Mhm.
sensitive information blacked out. And he's like, oh, this is actually how we train our guys. And Daniel was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Why don't we sell this as a course? We'll just go 50-50 on it. And like, I'll sell it to my audience. And we called it the Vault, which was something that's still up right now that you can take a look at. But it was essentially just all of these conversations of just via email that resulted in calls booked. So it's kind of like a swipe file. Hey, this is what works. Steal this formula, reverse engineer it, use it for your own offer. Great. So we did that, and we did like, I don't know, like 80 grand in the first couple weeks. We're like, oh shit. So this guy Daniel, this wizard, has a legitimate audience where people will listen to what he says and purchase what he puts out. So we just, kept staying in touch, and it was probably a month later where we launched Client Ascension. We all just kind of like locked ourselves in. It was still COVID at that point, and
Yeah.
just recorded the original content for it, launched that, and then that thing just took off like a rocket
Yeah.
ship. And it was really fun formulating that offer and that sales process, because I was back to what I feel like is the most fun sales call, which is like sales call for like a high ticket group coaching program. So it's good to get, it's a good change of pace from the agency sales that I've been doing for the past year.
Yeah.
And since then, it's just, that's been kind of like the main company that we've been working on.
Yeah. What is, in your opinion, like the main differences selling agency services versus the coaching?
So agency services are like straight B2B.
Yeah.
Yes, you can collect payment on the call. Not as important, and almost a bad look if you're trying to force it, honestly. Especially if they're looking into like other similar providers, which most people were, just because we had gotten the majority of our leads through either cold email, where if they're hopping
Mm-hmm.
on a call with us, there's probably another one or two that were offering the same thing. So they're also checking them out this week. And if not, they came through Twitter. And at the time, there was a bunch of different cold email lead gen agencies on Twitter as well. So that's B2B, which means it's going to be a longer sales cycle. It's a bit more of a technical sale where I'm talking about, DMARC records and all these nerdy cold email things, and kind of, talking at a very high enough level where they're like, okay, this guy knows his shit. I'm just going to defer to him. I'm going to trust him, has the authority. Where the coaching program, it's technically B2B because it's a coaching program that's to other agency owners, but a lot of times it feels B2C, just because
Yeah.
this is kind of like this isn't just an investment in their lead generation, right? It's an investment in the growth of their business. Is kind of like their baby. I would say it's a bit more of an emotional sale. And it's also something where, similar to like, most coaching programs, the goal is to collect payment on the call,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to, settling for, a follow up with other partners or something along those lines.
Yeah. I think you would have interesting perspective on this. I like when people come to me from perhaps other industries, let's say software, and they're like, dude, I want to get into high ticket sales. Where should I go? I always point them in the direction of like coaching to start, because they can get, you know, very likely more lead flow. There's like less, I mean, hold on. Yeah, less of a cap on fulfillment. Like with an agency, you have to like, you can only take on so many clients at a time.
Yeah.
Um, and I would say it's a little bit less barrier to entry, meaning you don't have to be an expert. Like it's not as much of a technical sale as maybe the B2B service would be.
Yep.
But you being not just a sales guy for both ends, but also building out the systems and being co-founder, like what have you seen to be, I don't know, like do you have a preference on selling one over the other? Like I don't know, what's your take on all the differences there?
I would say selling a coaching program is easier than selling
Yeah.
done for you agency services. Reason being is because the feedback loop is shorter, meaning because these are one call closes a lot of the times, meaning the sales cycle is ideally supposed to last a couple days. If you can load up a closer's calendar, they can get better very quickly, right? Whereas if you're selling agency done for you services and accepting that it may take 2 weeks because maybe SEO is just not on their horizon until Q4, like, and that's that.
Yeah.
It's going to be a little bit longer until the actual verdict comes in. And like you said, there is a bit more of a learning curve because like you're not just learning how to sell the product or how to sell the service, you're learning how to fundamentally understand and diagnose problems at a technical level. So it's like two learning curves. It's like, okay, first I need to understand this thing very well, whether it's cold email, whether it's influencer marketing, whether it's SEO. And then I also need to understand, okay, like what is like a realistic, sales process length? What is all these different things? Whereas the coaching side of things, like it's more B2C. So really the only learning curve I would say is really how to sell it. You don't really need to understand all of the intricacies at such a high level, in my opinion. And then
Mhm.
because it's a lot shorter, just like that feedback loop is, it's going to be something where like you can make leaps and bounds of improvements in a couple of days where an agency, it may take a couple months.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm curious, like you having done sale, you've done sales for like all the companies starting out. I think that's what you said. Like you don't like to just throw a sales guy on it. You want to figure it out. What is it like? Um, no, let me back up. How do you know you're ready to hire a closer for any of these businesses?
There's two things I would say. There's comfort and there's necessity. So the comfort part, what I mean by that is if I don't feel nervous getting on a call, if I'm not like, okay, shit, the plane's taking off, I'm on board, I'm not sure how I'm going to land this thing, I don't want to outsource it yet.
Yeah.
Once I feel like, okay, I could kind of do this in my sleep, I'm showing up like, yeah, I'll do like 2 minutes of research beforehand, but I, can hop on if this person is qualified. I can kind of walk through this pretty easily and close them. That's obviously when I'm like, okay, I could just outsource this. And then the numbers should reflect that. If they don't, you got to take a look in the mirror and be like, okay, am I not as good as I think? Right. Because
Yeah.
the numbers should also like kind of like show that same feeling. But the reason why I say comfort is the main thing is because sometimes you just get like a new offer where like you're rolling it out to a super warm audience and you have that high close rate, but
Yep.
you should take inventory and know, okay, it's probably the fact that I'm getting like the warmest leads first. So even though the
Mhm.
numbers are good, I just stay on a little bit longer until I'm like comfortable closing this offer to a bit of a colder audience. So that's one thing. The other thing about necessity is you got to really trust your team. And you got to know, hey, dude, if I don't have the time to take calls, I may have to do it a little bit earlier than I want. It's obviously not ideal. Like I want to be perfectly comfortable. I want to be able to close these types of calls in my sleep. But at the end of the day, if you're working on multiple companies and you quite literally don't have enough time open on your calendar to be able to keep up with the calls that are flowing in, you may have to just do it a little bit sooner. And I would say like the only tip I would give to those people who are in that situation is cut the salesperson some slack. Just give them a time, realize it's a learning curve, and just like double, triple down on quality control and watching their call recordings and talk them. And also like letting them know like, hey dude, it's a learning process. Like if you don't close the
Yeah.
first 3 calls, it's not the end of the world. We're going to figure this out together.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a good earlier in the call you mentioned that when you bring on a new closer, you expect them to do close at like 5-10% less than you. Like you're not expecting them to come and blow you out of the water. Whereas a lot of, and granted, you do have a sales background, a lot of founders or like, offer owners, let's call them, they they expect a sales guy to come in and like outperform them. They just think it's going to be like the magic bullet to blow their business up. I like the way that you see it, but why do you think that's the right way to see it?
Just there's a couple things I would say. One, there's definitely inherent benefits to doing founder-led sales. People feel like they're talking to the head honcho at the business. You're going to understand all of the intricacies about the service that you're providing. So like you'll never really get tripped up or caught with your pants down on a call. So that's one thing. I would say the second thing is I've never really hired somebody who's been like a super, super heavy hitter beforehand. So I'm going to give them some time. And then the third thing is I'm just super confident in my abilities, where I feel like if I'm on a new offer with whoever, I'll do as good, if not beat them. Now, I understand that there's people out there who are better than me at sales, but that's just kind of like the competitor in me speaking and saying like, okay, I don't think that person exists, so I'm not going to expect myself to find them, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that the main thing though really goes into just hiring people who I'm really just looking for more of a character fit than anything else.
Yeah.
I think right now closers are kind of, I think they're kind of fucking spoiled. Would be the way that I would put it, where like the whole like industry right now, because everybody who's selling sales training is making these claims, is like, yeah, dude, you're going to be at like 10K a month in 15 days, and it'll be making 20K a month. You'll be making 50K a month by like month 6, unless you absolutely suck, which is just such a dumb expectation to put out there. So I always like intentionally stay away from those people. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking for people who are very fine with like the on-track earnings, which I try to downplay most of the time, and are willing to, kind of like stay the course. But that usually ends up being people who maybe don't have the most experience. Right. So because they haven't closed, because most of the closers I've hired haven't had 20, 30K months ever before working with us, I'm not going to expect them to come in and have that here. It's just, I feel like it's not a good expectation to set on them.
Yeah. What do you think, besides the stuff that most salespeople would think would land them a job, like, oh, I've done this before, I've worked for this person, whatever. When you're hiring new people for any business that you run, what are some things that you kind of look for and that look good in your eyes that people may not, necessarily think are helping them land a job? Like you said, you look for character fit a lot, but are there other things that are kind of out of the ordinary that would give somebody a leg up when interviewing for one of your businesses?
Yeah, character fit, not having too big of an appetite too soon. Like if you want to make 50K a month, that's great. If you fully expect and want to be making 50K a month by month 2, I'm not going to hire you just because that's just not going to happen. Yeah. Right. And then I would say the third thing is just putting in effort into the interview process. Like when I always do a role play, whether I'm hiring for a setter or whether I'm hiring for a closer, at some point in the interview process. And I'm not looking for the people to master the sale, right? Like it's brand new, but it is clear like who actually studied it, who tried to put somewhat of their own spin on it, who's thinking critically when I ask them a question. So that's really I would say the main 3 things that I'm looking for is just like number 1, character fit, meaning, they're coachable, they're hungry. They seem like a self-starter, right? It's not going to be a guy where I constantly have to remind him to update his CRM and constantly remind him to fill out his end-of-day type form. They're not expecting to, make a neurosurgeon salary in the first quarter working here, especially if it's commission-based role. Like, yeah, there's going to be time where I have to train you and you have to go through that learning curve of actually getting good at selling this thing. And then the third thing is just like beforehand, if I give you material, to actually study, just like showing that you did study it and you put like at least a little bit of fucking effort into the process to try to get the job, and not giving off the vibe like, yeah, I'm interviewing for like 4 closer positions and just you guys are just one of 4 and I'll try to do good enough to get one. Like I'm not gonna try to hire somebody who is acting like a B player before they even get on.
Yeah. What's been your take on, going from closer for your own offers to sales manager and now how many people do you have on the client Ascension team, sales team?
We have 6. So 4
Okay,
closers and 2 setters.
cool. So you're managing 6 people. How does that line up to like versus just being an individual contributor? Like, do you like it more? Does it, or do you? I don't know. What's your take on it?
It's an interesting question. I feel like I like it more in the sense that I think it's more rewarding personally. Seeing my guys have a good day or a good month, them closing a deal, I feel like after a certain point, I got more excited about them closing a deal as opposed to me closing a deal myself.
Yeah,
But I would say it's harder for me personally. So it's difficult for me to say that being a sales manager is harder than being a salesperson. But personally, I feel like it didn't come as naturally to me at
mm,
first. And there was a steeper learning curve than I've ever had launching a new offer and selling it, which always, I'm not going to say like, oh, I'm a natural and just like mastered everything. But it is kind of nice when you're like the offer owner and salesperson because you just have ultimate responsibility, right? Like if something's not going right, you can just go in there and fix it yourself. And then you'll see like live what happens on the next call. Whereas if you're a sales manager and deals aren't closing, it's a little bit more difficult. You have to feel like, okay, is this a salesperson problem? Is this a lead flow problem? I have to go in, I have to watch the hour-long call recording. I have to talk to this person, see if they're doing well on a personal level, if there's something in their personal life that may be throwing them off. There's just like all of these different factors. And I guess for me, it didn't come as natural. So I would say I like being a sales manager more than being a closer,
yeah,
but it was more difficult and just didn't come as naturally to me at first.
yeah. I know there's a lot of people in who are probably listening to this with a sales background that are like they're kind of looking for that next thing, and like management it's like a very logical step.
Yeah.
What would you tell yourself like the first time you ever hired a setter or a closer to take care of this besides yourself? What would you tell the old you now knowing what you know about managing a sales team to like make that smoother?
80% of the growth that they have in the first 6 months is going to come in the first 3 weeks. So you need to go 100% overboard on like over communication and quality control, meaning like you're watching call recordings, you're giving lengthy feedback, like you're giving this person absolutely fucking everything that they need in the first 3 weeks and setting an expectation on what the close rate should be in like the first 20, 30 calls. Right. So like
Yeah.
I have an expectation, like with our closers, just be transparent. Like when I hire a new person, they need to see at least a 10% close rate in the first 20 calls or they're off the team. And then after that, it needs to immediately go up to a 20% close rate and level there or they're off the team. And the reason why I want to do that, Hermosi's talked about this a little bit as well, is if they're not able to hit that, they pretty much have no chance of being an A player because an A player will figure stuff out on their own and hit those benchmarks even without the best management in the world, right? Like they'll just figure it out. They'll be able to close somebody in the first sales cycle. They'll be able to, they'll be able to like just scratch and claw their way to a couple closes on their own.
Yeah.
That said, I want to make sure that I'm also trying to help them hit that goal as soon as possible too. And I'm not just like feeding them to the wolves. So like you usually see like tremendous growth right in the beginning. And then from there, it's kind of just like fine tuning things as they come. But like the first 3 weeks are so important because if you're not training them properly, if you're not giving them all the information, if you're not reviewing all of their calls, they may drag out for like 4, 5, 6 months and just be a terrible team member for you. And you don't even know because you didn't put the work in on the front end to just like throw them in the fire or throw them in the water and see if they were going to sink or swim.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like and I think it is also because you've been the sales rep and you've grown this stuff from like zero to what it is. It sounds like you're able to take like pretty good accountability for shortcomings, if assuming they are your fault. Whereas a lot of people, and it's probably the same people that hire a rep from day one, just think, oh, they didn't close, like they're garbage. Like
Yeah.
on to the next.
Oh,
Which
my
brings up,
partners still probably think of that. Like they're probably like, this guy's not closing. Like he sucks. Or like if I'm, hopping back on calls because we have a new offer and I'm not closing, they're like, oh yeah, Dan just sucks at sales. He just lost it. He lost his fastball. Whereas me, I'm like, okay, dude, I've been in that situation where yes, somebody tells me they're 100% in and don't move across the finish line. I get that, like, even the best salesperson out there, like, that's going to happen to them at some point. So I have a level of empathy for that. Um,
Yeah.
and definitely, yeah, like an understanding of like, okay, at the end of the day, no matter how good you are, like there's going to be points like where you struggle. Like even the best salesperson will enter into a slump. So I feel like, yeah, just like my experience talking to people, and also the fact that I'll get back into the sales process periodically if we're launching a new offer, definitely like humbles me and makes me understand like, okay, yeah, what they're going through isn't easy. Like I wouldn't say sales is an easy job. A lot of people sell their sales coaching programs or a number of different things based on the lifestyle of like sales being easy. And I feel like that's also kind of misleading. Like it's really not, it's not the hardest job in the world. Like I'd rather do this than a ton of other things, but it's not as
Yeah.
easy as everybody makes it out to be.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. That's so like when things hit a wall and you start to not see the results that you want to see, you're not really afraid to like roll your sleeves up and start taking calls yourself, which is super cool. Um, but you're not like from what I understand, you're not taking calls on a date like sales calls on a daily basis, right? Well, maybe for ListKit, maybe. Or
I would say right now I am, just because we have a new offer that we're still putting the
okay.
finishing touches on at Client Ascension, and then also any demos that come through ListKit I'm taking as well. So that's only like enterprise sales demos. But yesterday I had a call. Today I've had two calls. I'm saying like right now I'm probably at like a call or two a day, like actual sales call.
Okay. Cool. What do you I want to be diligent of time here. What are you really looking forward to over like the next year with all the businesses, sales teams, people on them? What do you what do you see happening here?
I feel like honestly I'm so excited about the businesses that we're running right now. And I feel like what I want to do is just build like world class sales organizations, because I'm so confident in the team behind the sales
Hmm.
organization. Where like I know that they're going to do a good job for our clients. So like if there's not enough conviction on the sales side, it's just because like I'm not communicating just how good that team is to the
Yeah.
salespeople properly. And that's something I'm working on now. I'm like having all like the student success coaches at Client Ascension like reach out to closers and post wins in the sales team channel so they can just see what we're doing for different people. And then on ListKit, obviously it's in its infancy as like a standalone SaaS product right now. But I'm just like really confident in our dev team that we have, and just like Andre's ability as an operator there and kind of like leading everything, and Christian and cold email wizard Daniel to market the shit out of it. So I don't know if I have like a one thing in particular I'm looking forward to. I'm just trying to make the sales team as just like killer as possible, just because I know the guys on the other side after somebody does sign on is just as good, if not better.
Yeah. Dude, and I mean, you've done the service based business, you've done the coaching business, and now you're starting the software business. What kind of differences are you expecting when it comes to leading sales efforts for the new one?
I think there's going to be a lot more automation involved, and it's going to be a lot more sophisticated from a technical aspect. Like right now, just like setting up the CRM and everything, as opposed to just, hey, like somebody books a call, put them in the call book column. There's like that column. Then there's also everybody who's purchased so far and signed up in like the paying customer column. And then every person who's churned, like nobody really has yet, but once they do churn, they'll be moved into a different column, and trying to re-engage those people through sequences as opposed to manual sales efforts. And also having something in there to like send you a reminder and just like drop an email and let you know like, hey, this person's been a loyal customer for 6 months, might as well reach out to them. Or hey, this person has a lot of unused credits in their account, you should reach out to them and see if you know what's going on. Or hey, this person consistently reaches the credit limit on their account each month, you should reach out to them, see if there's an upgrade opportunity. So I think things like that, where you're looking at a lot more like sequences, workflows, is going to be the main difference there. And then in terms of compensation, it'll have to look a lot different. I don't know exactly what that looks like.
Yeah.
I'm very transparent and telling people like I just talk to other people that know what they're doing. Like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing when it comes to building out a sales team for a SaaS product. I just don't know, but I'm a big believer in coaching and consulting, right? Like the first investments that we made, even when we had no money, were into these different sales programs. Like we got one of Russell Brunson's programs. I bought like $100 course from Taylor Welch, which I loved. And that was like a big part of like the structure that I used early on. And then I got good at closing. And then when I was like, okay, now I'm more of a sales team manager, I got to find out how to be the best sales team manager. So we invested in Cole Gordon's team, which I've had a really good experience with them too. So for the SaaS side of things, I'm guessing the compensation is going to have to look a lot different. I can't imagine that you're going to be hiring somebody in a commission only basis when the ticket price is so low. It just doesn't make sense. So you don't know what you don't know yet. I'm going to figure it out myself first. And then as I like go to scale the team, I'll probably buy some sort of info product or connect with somebody who's successfully done it beforehand. And that's kind of always been like the route that I've taken.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like, I talk to a lot of salespeople, but not like, again, I think you just have such a unique perspective because you've been the sales guy, you've been the manager, you've been the owner, and now you're venturing into software where it's like, it seems like a lot of people are making that move once they have like something working and then they build the software off the back of it or in conjunction or whatever. But from a sales perspective, like I don't really know anyone else who's kind of made that move and who is moving in that direction like you guys are. So that's super, super cool. And I was just interested to hear. I'm sure
yeah,
you've thought about it, maybe not in like so much detail, but
it's a
yeah.
unique perspective. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, we're pretty basic with an agency, a coaching program, and a SaaS. Nothing. We're not reinventing the wheel. So I know that there'll be plenty of people that have done similar stuff that I can reach out to and use as resources throughout the way. But yeah, no, definitely have my hands in a lot of pots at the moment. So I think like what I'm most excited about now that I've had some time to like reflect on your question is getting to a point where I have all these different sales teams that are all functioning at a high level. Because right now, like
Yeah.
there's the setter team, there's the closer team, there's the ListKit sales team, which is literally just me, and then there's the back end client Ascension sales team, which is really like the student success coaches who will be the ones heading up that sales process. But I'm excited to get to a point where like all four of those processes are proven out. I've removed myself from all four, and I have a good leader in place to report to me for all four. So right now, like I'm the leader, or like in the ListKit example, I am like the entire team. Excited to get to a point where like this may take realistically a year, 18 months, 2 years to get to. But the thing I want to have is just like four great teams, four great leaders on each team. And like my day to day is checking in to see what those leaders need and making sure that like they have all the assets from like the co-founding group and everything, every other part of the business in order for like their individual team to succeed.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like the promised land that I'm looking at right now.
Cool. I wanted to ask you too, because I feel like a lot of people go into this online business stuff and they do it alone. How big of a part of the success you found so far do you think is attributed to you doing it with guys that you can trust and guys that are going to show up and put in the work just as much as you are?
I would attribute pretty much all of the success that I've had up to this point to the team. I'm not the type of person who would go out and just start a company on their own. I always wanted to, but I think like intentionally after going through it the first time. So I didn't always think this way, but after going through it the first time, it gives you that like same excitement that team sports gives you. Like, dude, this is just fucking fun. You have somebody to celebrate the wins with. Like, we have a big week. We go out as a group, and it's just a good fucking time. We have these events that we're putting on. We had one in Tampa. We had one in London, and just like the team is such an integral part of that, and that's like what makes it all worth it. Same thing with the losses. Like, you have somebody to share those losses with. To be like, dude, I'm fucking struggling right now. Like, what do you think? Like, and you have like an unbiased opinion with somebody who like literally is their incentives are very aligned for you guys because you're both equity holders, trying to help you out, trying to lift you up. So I think that for like the rest of my career in entrepreneurship, I don't know necessarily what I'm going to do, but I'll always do it with partners just because it's like that team sports feel where like, dude, it's super fun. And it also allows me to stay in my lane. Right. Whereas like, I don't necessarily want to become an expert on all these other parts of the business. I know that if I'm part of a team, I can bring a shit ton of value as like the sales head and the sales function of that team. But I don't need to focus on the marketing. I don't need to focus on all these other different aspects of the business as long as I'm surrounding myself with talented people. So yeah, I would say
Yeah.
all of it to the team.
Cool. Yeah, dude. I mean, myself, like I've have a couple of things going on, and for the most part, I do a lot of it alone. Like I have people who help, but I don't have like co-founders in anything. Um,
Is that not super lonely
and
though? Like that's gotta be tough, no?
dude, it is tough. Yes, it's tough because like sales is just one piece of the business, and if something breaks over here, something breaks over there, you still got to make sure that this one piece is fine. And it is tough, man. I feel like you get to a point, and depending on what kind of business you're running, you get to a point where it's like you're tapped out, you know? So
You also just have to
just,
have
I'm
decision fatigue too. Like there's just when you look at the entire business, there's so many decisions that need to
yeah,
be made. And if like, even if you delegate properly, if all the decisions get funneled back up to the top, like that's just an insane amount of work, right? That's for one venture. So if you're running like 2 or 3 different things at the same time, yeah, dude, I could definitely see like burnout being a real threat to
yeah,
like not
yeah.
really the health, not really your health. I'm not trying to scare you, but definitely to the business's health at some point.
Yeah, no, dude, you are like right on. Like I feel like to get to the next level, gotta definitely do things that I haven't done before, and working with people who can help provide value in areas that I might not be the best to execute within, or that's probably next on the list here.
Yeah.
So um let's let's wrap it up here. I think it was super like compact, good episode, a
Yeah.
lot of good insight for the sales reps, managers, business owners. Good to kind of hear your internal thoughts on how the businesses are playing out, what you're expecting of them. uh all the links for all this stuff, and I want you to plug it. I'm going to drop them below, but where do you want to send the people?
Yeah. So head to clientascension.com. If you're running an agency, if you're running a coaching program, if you're really running any type of B2B service based business, check us out. We're doing some pretty cool stuff up there. We're getting our students crazy good results. So yeah, I would love to welcome you into the community, or just have a quick chat with you if you're interested. And listkit.io if you're looking for accurate B2B contact data. So if you need to find decision makers in your specific target market that you're looking to get a hold of and have more sales calls with, start at listkit.io. And that's really it, man. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, both those handles are Dan Crowley 1212. And if you want to check out our podcast, it's called Stick Talk Podcast. It's not about hockey. That was a common confusion early on. But yeah, check that out. We're mainly on YouTube there.
Cool. Yeah, solid podcast. Any of you guys listening, if you're listening to my podcast, yes, you're gonna like to listen to theirs. And I'll plug all the socials below. But Dan, man, it's been a pleasure to meet you, and kind of like see how I feel like I haven't heard you on Stick talk too much about like the sales stuff super in depth.
Yeah. Yeah. We're
So
more focused
I was happy to have you
on the guests. Yeah. So it's good to be able to kind of share that with you guys, and hope you enjoyed it. Hope somebody out there got some value, and yeah, man, we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, for sure, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no doubt, brother. Thank you.
All right. Take care.